So I'm going to introduce to you quadratics first. I'm going to show you what quadratics look like, quadratic equations look like, and then we are going to learn how to factor these quadratic equations. Okay? So a quadratic equation is an equation that has a degree of 2. Okay? So if you look at this, for example, if I write one for you right now, so y equals 3x squared plus 5x plus 1, let's say, right? You have, how many terms do we have here?
3.
We have 3 terms. 1, 2, 3, yes? The first term has an x and a square on top of it. The second term has just x, and the third term doesn't have an x, right? So the highest degree that we have here is a degree 2. Yes? So we call this degree 2, we call them quadratics. This is the name for them. You know how we did linear before, where with a line? Now we're looking at quadratics. So there are different kind of functions. Okay? So these are called quadratics. So this form that you see right now, when we have y equals something x squared plus something x plus 1, we call that the standard form of quadratic. Okay? This is called the standard form. We're going to learn how to factor that standard form. Okay? So factor means how to put it in 2 brackets multiplied together. Remember when we did something that was like this 2 days ago? We had x minus 1, x plus 2, let's say, and then we did the FOIL, remember? And then we went from this form to x squared, x times 2 is 2x, negative 1 times x is negative 1x, negative 1 times 2 is negative 2, and then we collected like term. Remember this? So we went to this form, which is the standard form. So this right here looks like this, right? So today what we're going to do, we're going to, instead of going from this format, from the standard form to this form, today we're going to do the opposite. So today we're going to learn how to go from this form to this form. Okay? That's what we're going to learn today. Okay? So here's what we are going to do today. So the letters A, B, and C, they're technically numbers. Okay? They're numbers. They could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, negative 1, negative 10, negative 12, negative 1.5. It could be any number for A, B, and C. Okay? But for this unit or for this course, we are going to learn how to factor quadratics when A is equal to 1. Okay? So this is going to work. We're going to learn how to factor this when A is always equal to 1. So here's some examples. So the first example is asking you to factor. So the question will ask you to factor, and then they gave you the quadratic function. Okay? It's y squared minus 8y plus 15. Can you tell me what the value of A is? A is 1. You see, it's right here. It's not there. That means it's 1. What's the value of B? Negative 8. So B is negative 8. What's the value of C? C is positive 15. That's right. Okay? So look at this. A is the one with the x squared. B is the one with just the letter no square on top of it. And C is the constant that's by itself. Are you guys okay with this? So identify them. You need to be able to identify A, B, and C. Okay? So A is 1, B is -8, and C is 15. In order for me to be able to factor this, I'm going to have to look for the following. I'm going to have to look for two numbers that always multiply to 15, and at the same time, it has to add to -8. Okay? So you have to give me two numbers that multiply to 15. And at the same time, they have to add to -8. So it always multiply to your C. So multiply to C and add to B. Okay, so what multiplies to 15? I don't have too many options. What multiplies to 15? 1 and 15. 3 and 5. Yes? These are my options. That's the only thing that multiplies to 15. Now, it could be positive or negative. So it could be -1 and -15 because when I multiply negative by negative, it makes it a positive. And then it could be -3 and -5. Yeah? Because negative times negative is a positive. Which one of this combination adds to -8? So let's look. 1 plus 15 gives me 16, so that's not it. 3 plus 5 gives me 8. That's not it because I'm looking for -8. -1 and -15. That's -16. Again, that's not it because I'm looking for -8. -3 and -5. -8. Right? So this is my answer. So these are my factors, and this is the answer I'm looking for. Okay? So I'm just going to recap what I did. So I look at my equation, or at my quadratic, and I look at the A, B, and C. I look for two numbers that multiply to C and add to B. I'm going to give you a sheet that has the rules of, let's say, if B is positive or B is negative or C is positive and C is negative, the combination, your factors, what are they going to be? Are they going to be positive? I'll explain this in a second for you, okay? So I'll give you the sheet just to help you figure out, are they going to be positive, are they going to be negative, or what are they going to be, okay? Yes. So I found my factors. My factors are -3 and -5, all right? So all what I have to do right now is I have to put my brackets. And because the first term is a y squared, then I'll have y in my first position. And then I put -3. And I put the second factor in the second bracket, so that's -5. So from the standard form to this form, it's y minus 3 times y minus 5. It's not going to come to you from the first time. Okay, you're not going to be able to get it from the first time. Okay, so I'm going to write down to you what you have to do in words. So you're going to look for two numbers that multiply to C and also add to B. So when they multiply to C, they also have to add to the same, to the C value. Okay? Once you find these two numbers, then you're going to put them in the bracket. In the first, so you put your brackets, right? In the first location, you're going to put your whatever letter you have, but not squared. So if it's x, it will be, if it's x squared, it will be x. If it's b squared, it's going to be b. If it's d squared, it's going to be d. Okay? So in the first location, you're going to put your letter. And then you're going to put the first factor. So plus the first factor. And then in the second location, you're going to put your second factor. Yes? No. It doesn't matter if you put y minus 5, bracket y minus 3. It's the same thing. Now let's try to see if our answer makes sense. If I want to go from this form, right here, which is factored form, if I want to go to the expanded form, if I want to expand, what do? What process do I do? FOIL. You guys remember the word FOIL stands for first, outer, inner, last. So I have to multiply. Okay? So let's do that. I'm just checking my work here, okay? And this is not a required step. I'm just checking. I'm showing you that it actually does work. Okay? So let's check. So I'm going to multiply this by this. That gives me y squared. Y times y is y squared. You guys agree? What's y times negative 5? Now, what's negative 3 times y? And what's negative 3 times negative 5? So that simplifies to y squared minus 8y plus 15. Is that the same thing I started with? Yes. Okay? This part right here is just the checking part. So you don't have to do this unless you're not sure if your answer is right or wrong. Okay? So here are some of the rules that I will give you on a sheet of paper, but at the same time, I'm going to write them on a piece of paper here. Okay? So your B and your C. And then your factors. So if B is positive and C is positive, if both of them are positive, then both factors are going to be positive. If B is negative and C is positive, then what happens is both of them have to be negative, like the scenario that we just had. So both factors have to be negative. Okay? Look at the scenario that we just had. We had y squared minus 8y plus 15. Yes? Yes? So you see that B is negative and C is positive. Yes? B is negative and C is positive. And I ended up with two negative factors, yes? My factors were negative 3 and negative 5, so they're both negative. Okay? So when you look at this and you see that B is negative and C is positive, you know that both of your factors are going to be negative. Then if I have B is positive and C is negative, then your large number, your large factor, is going to be positive, and the small factor is going to be negative. Okay? So in the case that I had, for example, I had, I don't know if it's going to work here, but if I had this, for example, or wait, I'm just thinking of an example. That doesn't work. Let's do that as 10. Okay, if I had something like this, right, where B is positive and C is negative, my factors are going to be positive 11 and negative 1. Okay, so the large number is going to be positive and the small number is going to be negative. Okay, And then if I had the other way around where B is negative and C is negative, then they're both are going to be, no, not both, never mind. Just one second. So negative and negative, then your large is going to be negative and your small is going to be positive. Okay? I'm going to give you this for, I'll take it and I'll photocopy it for you guys. I'll photocopy more copies, okay? Can you guys share this for now? All right. So let's look at the other question right here. So I have x squared plus 3x minus 10. So factor x squared plus 3x minus 10. What's the value of a? A is 1. What's b? And what's c? Negative 10. Okay? That's okay. I'll get more. I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to which one and add to which? Multiply to negative 10 because it multiplies to c, right? So multiply to negative 10 and add to 3. Okay. So if you look at that sheet that I just given you, right? In this case, c is negative and then b is positive, right? So I'm going to go back here. C is negative and B is positive, yeah? So C is negative and B is positive, so that's this scenario right here, right? So B is positive, C is negative. So in this case, I'm looking for a large positive number and for a small negative number. Okay. So what multiplies to negative 10? 1 and 10, but I have a large positive, right? And a small negative. So it's going to be negative 1 and 10. Okay? 2 and 5. Which one is going to be the negative? Nope. The 2. The 2. Right? Because I'm going to take you back here. The large is going to have to be positive, and the small is going to have to be negative. So the large is going to be positive, 5 is going to be positive, and 2 is going to be negative. Do I have any other option that multiplies to negative 10? No. So right now, negative 1 plus 10, what does that give you? Negative 1 plus 10. 9. Is that what I'm looking for? I'm looking for something that adds to 3. Negative 2 plus 5. 3. That's my answer. Okay? So that means my factor are going to be negative 2 and 5. Okay? So that factors 2. Bracket. What letter do I put first? X. And then I put minus 2 because I have one of my factors minus 2. And then plus 5. That's it. Okay? You need to get used to it. You need to do it. You need your multiplication table. Okay? The multiplication table that I've given you earlier in the semester. It's in the back of the review package. Okay. So you need that. In the meanwhile, I want you to do the other questions. So let's go back here. Of what? Yes, just one second. Okay, just give me a second, okay? So I want you to work on the following right now. So you are going to do y squared minus 12y plus 32. And then I want you to factor t squared plus 4t minus 21. Okay? So these are the two questions that are left from the first page. So you want to take a picture of this? Let me just 1 second.